Can we call our session to order, please? This is terrific. We're glad to see everybody out this morning, bright and early. And first off, let's talk about what's going on today and who's who. My name's John Marshall. I'm from Virginia. On my left is Earl Johnston from Connecticut. On his left is Don Beck from Massachusetts. I would have high hopes that you know both of these gentlemen. They have fairly high profiles in the activity, some longer than others. The profile, that is, Earl. Just the profile. Okay? We were just discussing Earl's beginnings, and we had a little calendar problem, but we got that, kind of got that straightened out, didn't we? Once we got into the right century, we were okay. I'm going to have a little bit to say to you in general about the areas we're going to be covering, the what's and the whys of why we're going to be covering it and addressing it. Then Earl's going to talk to you a little bit with some insights from the direction that we have come from to where we are today, and some very specific things that you might want to address in your calling. Don has a variety of component things that he's going to talk to you about that make up having to do with your presentation skills as relates to smoothness and body flow, and you notice those are both listed separately, and I think you'll see why as we go. And we'll come back with a slight summation, possibly. I'll have a few extra comments in all likelihood, and knowing me. And then we'll also open it up for discussion, questions from the floor. If time allows, we'll also get involved with some dance examples that may be of help if we have the time. As we were discussing what to present and talk to you about and share with you this morning, we realized that probably between us, if any one of us was going to address this topic on a caller's school level, we'd be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 8 hours worth of material, which we're obviously not going to do in an hour and 15 minutes. One of the things we really want to do is make you more aware, more conscious about what you're doing with the dancers, what you're doing to your dancers, in some cases. We hear body flow talked about a lot of times. I hear big-name, national, well-known, well-respected callers say, you stress that too much. You make too big a deal out of it. But then when I go and watch them call, most often their body flow is quite good. They tend to pass it off. Because it's become a natural thing. It is not natural for all of us. We do not all analyze every call. What happens when we get out there and we pick up that microphone, some of those things kind of escape us. Can we close those doors, please? I'd appreciate it. Some of those things escape us when we have our hands full with the mic. We know about them. We can sit and talk with other callers about them. We can analyze them. However, the microphone's in hand, and now it's how do we get back to point one, who's reacting to what, and those things kind of go out of our mind. And what you need to establish, in my opinion, are good, solid habits that become automatic. So you're not having to consciously think about it. Initially, hopefully you will do just that. Hopefully as you're working and being conscious about what's happening on the floor with the dancers, you'll see yourself falling into a trap, making a mistake. You'll talk to your dance partner and say, look, if I see something, if you're out there dancing and there's something that I call that's uncomfortable, let me know later. And as you become more and more aware of it, you'll catch yourself. You'll be calling along and you'll call something and you'll say, ooh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Where before you might have called it and not thought about it at all. But as you develop stronger habits in this line, it'll become automatic and your dancing will improve markedly. We're talking about fluidness. We're talking about motion on the floor. We're talking about a sense of assuredness when we're talking about dance style and flow. And I'm going to talk about in a minute why this is really important. This is not a minor thing. You look at the figure skaters. We've seen a lot of that recently in the World Championships, the U.S. Championships, the Olympics. It's been really interesting to watch. When the skaters really know what they're doing and they're really on, you have that sense of not only fluidness and motion, but that sense of command. You know, we look at them and you can see them, they own the ice at any given point in time. We've experienced as dancers, hopefully all of you have experienced as dancers, that magic moment. That square that you still remember. You remember when the four of us were dancing to Joe Blow at the festival? We couldn't miss anything. And it was like glass. Dancers remember those tips. Often they can't say they remember an hour, let alone a weekend or a whole dance that was like that, because that's a fine line to approach and to maintain, right? It's not the easiest thing in the world because we have such a mix of 8 different people all moving at the same time, and we're trying to blend that. But that's what we look for, and that's the ideal situation. And it's a great feeling. I would like to think most of you had the opportunity to experience that, because that's the way to dance. And it works well. We're going to talk about some of the ways to make that happen. And one of the reasons these things are important, several of the reasons that it's important, when your dancers are dancing in that fashion, where they're moving from one call into another, that sense of self-confidence that's developed. It's a subconscious thing, but their confidence builds and builds and builds. It becomes easier to teach them. They trust you more. Right? And the body flow situation that we're talking about, the smoothness, will help carry them. You will make your floors more successful. You will have a much higher success rate if your body flow is good. One of the fastest ways to break down a floor is with bad body flow. But you can take dancers who are hanging on by the edge and make them successful simply by having good body flow as they learn to trust the flow that you're presenting to them, and as it becomes comfortable, that trust is there, and they will let the material carry them one call into another, even if they become momentarily disoriented and might break down if you gave them the chance. If the flow is there and they've learned to trust it, they will have more successful squares. As soon as that happens, of course, you are a much better caller because they were successful. You know, it's kind of a backward way to slide into it, but that's part of what happens. That situation of flow and movement that we're looking for, it gives us the extra use of one of our best tools, and that's music. If the dancer is confident and comfortable and flowing, the music we pick lends to help that happen. But more importantly, if we know that we're calling that way and the dancers can take advantage of it, the music that we choose becomes all important because it conveys that emotional sense that you're trying to establish on the floor at a given point in time in the dance, whether it be high excitement, whether it be a soft mellow situation, or just smooth gliding along. But all of it will allow the dancer to appreciate the music more if he's in motion and enjoying it, becoming part of the music. And that again ties in with music as well as your use of phrasing and so on. And there's a lot of areas of this that overlap into other fields that are important. And we'll try to stay on track as much as possible without going too far afield, but there is a certain amount of overlap. I think that I've talked about all the things we need to lay the groundwork. And we're going to talk about all these different situations, as many as we can cover, at least in that period of time. And I'm going to ask you, if you would, to welcome Earl Johnston, who's now going to step in and take his start on the program.
Thank you, John. One of the nice things about being in the square dance calling field for many, many years is that you've had a chance to grow with the activity. And I was fortunate enough, when I started calling back in 1943, there were about 21 calls. And we didn't have a burlesons because we didn't need it. You could put everything you knew in a little notebook. I was lucky because if I had a mentor, it was a man named Ed Gilmore, who was from Ukiah, California. And Gilmore was a stickler for body flow. It had to be proper. And he wouldn't accept various things that are quite acceptable today. For example, if he were calling a square through, it was absolutely forbidden to finish a square through with a star through. You just couldn't do it. If you called the lady's chain, you could not follow that with an Alaman left, because a lady's chain ends with a left hand joined with the lady, the right hand around the waist. So you had to know what you were doing. If you were calling a teacup chain, he would not allow it to be called from a static square. You had to start it with a do pass so, because then you were turning with the left hand and you had proper flow. As the activity has grown, we change. And I think one of the secrets of success in the square dance field is to change with the times. However, I think some of our changes have been very, very bad. From a flow and a presentation standpoint, in my opinion, everything filters down. Nothing filters up. And in the past few years, probably the past 10 or 15, advanced dancing has taken a predominant place in the activity. I'm not going to address advanced dancing. Don't get scared, mainstream guys. But what has happened is, as I see it, we tend now to use terms that have filtered down. For example, check your wave. It's very hard to meter and present a flowing call if you're checking your wave and checking your two-phase line and who are the centers and ends, are you ready, that sort of thing. And we use these terms under the guise of being helpful. And I wonder if we don't forsake smoothness and flow for that. I would rather dance personally a much lower level dance that danced well than be checking my diamond and checking my fly and checking my corner and checking this and checking that. And a man told me one time, he was an old contra dancer, and he said the difference between Eastern and Western style dancing is that Eastern style dancers dance with their feet and Western style dancers dance with their hands. And he told me that 25 years ago. And what is our big emphasis today in dancing? Well, even in beginners, touch hands, touch hands, touch hands. Nobody ever says put your foot down on the beat anymore. It's touch hands, touch hands. Get your hands out, work them to your side. We even went through hassles in various parts of the country over what hand grip we would use, up or down. We shouldn't even have to think about the walking to the music and so on, but I think we as callers tend to disrupt the dancing, which is a natural thing for people. And the reasons for this is the way we present what we're calling. If we use the music is made up of phrases, and they're 8-beat phrases. We do things in 8s. If we would let people dance to the music and call to the music, you wouldn't have half of the problems that people seem to have with getting mixed up, because the calls would flow from one to the next. But you have to be careful, because today we don't think about that. Golly, guys will square through 3 hands and do a star through. They will fight body flow. They will do-si-do with their corner. Then they will star through and veer to the left. I think callers should be forced to dance some of the things they're calling. I always thought that to do a star through and veer to the left was designed as a medical test to see if women had bursitis, or the start of it. And if you've never done it, get in the girl's part sometime and have some big jabogi do a star through with you and then yank you to the left. See how you like it. But people do it all the time. But because people do it all the time, does that make it right? I don't think so. I don't think so. The callers who are the really successful callers, and I'm sure you all think of somebody when in your home area, or maybe one of the traveling callers, one of the things they probably have going for them is good choreography that presents well, dances well, and flows well. I just can't emphasize enough the fact that we should not allow ourselves to get sloppy for the sake of choreography. I have a feeling that many of us get so involved with trying to find that corner that we don't care what's going on within the square. We get involved with sight calling, and we get people in positions that are really bad, and we don't even think what we're saying. If you are a professional or semi-professional caller, I would think that everybody here except the blue badges are competent callers, because that's what it says. You got the guys to sign the paper that said you were. So if everybody was honest, you are a caller, then you should know where every call that you use starts and where it ends, and what calls you shouldn't use with it, and under what circumstances. You say, well, how do you find that out? Well, most of it's in the book. You can get those books that used to be Sets and Orders, and now it's Stan Burdick, I guess, has them. The big thing on calling, definitions of the mainstream and the plus list. There's all kinds of examples in there. But my pet peeves are, when I'm dancing, are the star through and the veer left. That one's bad. Once in a while you hear a guy will do a centers in and bend the line, but that's a mistake. Anybody that does that and doesn't know that's wrong really should not be a square dance caller. I think you're allowed to make mistakes. I'm not saying you don't do it, but you should know when you do it that it's wrong. Now, I look over here at Howard Gilmore, who's an old friend of mine, and we talk many times, and Howard will back me up on this, I'm sure, about the old-time dancing was so smooth and so super, everything flowed. Well, not where I come from. I mean, some of those old contra dances were terrible as far as flow went, but they danced. The people danced, and we say, I hope this isn't too much digression, but we say a right and left through should take 8 steps. Well, contra dancers, many of them do a right and left through in 6 steps. But then they don't stand there and look at the caller and say, come on. They would dance in place, doing a 2-step or a jig step, and then start in on the next phrase of music. We don't have time to show that anymore. We have to get on to the next call in the list, the next call that's there. But I don't really believe that any dance form is absolutely perfectly smooth. It just can't be. Because you're dealing with people, now ballet, well, they even stop and start over. They will stop in place, and then they'll go back off the other way. So there are stops and starts in any dance form. Yes. Oh, that's the way I do it.
Can I see that again?
Well, yes, I'll show you later.
I'm making notes here.
The thing is that you have to know your material. You have to know your material and know how it dances. And the way you do that is by spending some time and studying. If you're working a full-time job and you got a family and you're calling 5 nights a week and you don't have time to do that, maybe you're calling too much. Maybe you ought to call 4 nights a week and spend the night studying this stuff, because it is part of the thing of being a caller. Calling is not just getting to an Alaman left. I'd rather dance to a guy who missed his corner once in a while, who called well, than some guy who always gets the corner and it dances terrible. There is a problem with flow, and that is overflow. At the mainstream level, I don't see this as a big problem, and I'll tell you why. If you're calling for mainstream people or mainstream plus people like I am, I don't really have the luxury of calling that many calls before an Alaman left that I develop much overflow, because they start to screw up. And so you got to get to an Alaman left and then start over. I guess the worst of overflow is the swing through and the boys run and bend the line and a right and left through and a flutter wheel and sweep a quarter and veer to the left and Ferris wheel, where you've got people continually going in this right-handed movement all the way around. If you find you're getting involved in too much overflow, there's a very simple call that you can use at any time to break it up. Well, you can't use it any time, but when the time is right. A right and left through changes all of that. It's the dancer's best friend for getting out of these dizzying situations. A right and left through will send people in the opposite direction, and then you can start over. And it dances well. The other problem with dancing too much in the same direction, going to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right all the time, is that people get dizzy. And especially the ones that I'm dealing with, I don't know, where have all the youngsters gone? I deal with all the people in our clubs have white hair and a gadget in their ear that they're continually fiddling with. I can't quite figure that out. But these people, by the same token, if you give them too many calls in the same direction, they tend to get dizzy and they get lost. And if you're calling a lot, you see them. They'll even get into the next square by mistake. They'll drift out of their square. This is from overflow. You're calling too many things going the same way. Stick in some right and left throughs. Stick in some ladies' chains. Those two things get you going the other way. You have to be aware of that. But you got to do your homework, guys. You got to find out, where does a square through end from different positions? What fits it? What is a good call after it? You probably get Don's notes. Well, if you're a reader, then you're completely dependent upon his idea of flow. You see, you should develop your own ideas of flow. I know a lot of callers do read material. I can't believe that you got people to sign your paper to get into this organization if you can't call a mainstream plus dance without notes. But if you got in, you're in, so we're addressing you now. You better start doing some homework, because it isn't fair to your dancers, and you've got to do your homework and find out how these calls go. A new call comes out. Retain your lane. Nice call. Learn how you can do it. I'm not saying, I'm not a proponent of all position dancing either. I think that gets too tough. But you ought to study that call and see what it does. If you're in a wave, what does it take you to? If you're in a two-face line, what does it take you to? What's a good call that follows it? What's a good call to lead into it? But it's a matter of homework, and I think you can do it. I'm going to end with being aware that you are, like these guys in the next room, they're listening about entertaining, I guess. It doesn't matter whether you're going to be a funny entertainer or a smooth, flowing entertainer. You're still, I agree with that. I think we are showmen. And we're leaders, and we're, all that stuff that they put in the magazines. But basically, I think we're an entertainer, entertaining people. And the last thing you have to watch for when you're entertaining people is to keep them entertained. And when you develop good flow and smooth choreography, be aware that you will now be accused of being a fast caller. They will say you call too fast. Because the dancer today is not used to going from one call to the next, to the next, to the next in a nice flowing motion. He's used to saying, do a recycle. Please? Thank you. That was very lovely. Check your two-face line. Veer to the left. Please? Thank you. Lovely. To you, sir. Carry on. Here we go. Terrible. To me, that's the worst kind of calling. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl. Isn't it amazing? How can he do that, He stands here and he talks, he's so tough, and you got to do this, and you shouldn't be a caller if you're not doing that, and then it's please and thank you and lovely. How do you do that together? Oh, that's neat. I want to just inject a little bit here. Earl's comments about overflow are certainly valid, and one of the examples that he gave you was all this action to the right or to the left, where you end up with one leg shorter than the other, or a sore hip, or what have you. That can happen, and it happens with the best of intent. The caller is saying, well, this leads into that nicely, and it does. And one or two of those combinations may well do that. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are a bit much, and exactly what you were saying does happen. Another action that we can talk about in terms of overflow, if you're asking the dancers to function as far as I'm concerned, 360-degree turn, or two calls put together that cause them to go 360 degrees. That's, to me, overflow. You get that far, and you've had them turn a full circle, and people do get disoriented, and they do break down. That's just one part of body flow that we're talking about here. And Earl's very, very right when he talks about forms of entertainment. We both, all three of us, in fact, looked at the schedule and we said, well, geez, you guys will probably all go over there. And I thought, well, that's a possibility, because that has that big image of excitement, festival-type entertainment. And that's nice if you're doing festivals all the time, or you hope to, and you certainly can pick up on that. But what about every single night of the week, or the 3 or 4 nights of the week that you're calling? What about good, solid, basic entertaining the people? And Earl's very right. When they walk away saying, boy, it was a good dance tonight, they don't mean, didn't he tell a great joke, and wasn't that really funny, and that's part of it. But also the fact that they got to dance all evening is a big part of it. One of the methods you might employ when we talk about knowing what calls to use together is a method that I use called flowcharting. I set up a little flowchart, and you can do the same thing. If it's a call I'm not real familiar with, a new call comes out. Thank you for the plug on Retain Your Lane. I appreciate that, Earl. That was very nice of you. That was an accident, by the way, as most of them are, I think, the new ones, right? You'll take the call, and I'll make a little chart, and I'll put on the left-hand side of the chart, lead call. What call I want to use to lead into it. Then the starting position that I find myself in to actually do the call. The following thing would be the ending position. The next thing over would be the following call, because we've got to tie them all together. Now, the nice thing about that is I might go in here and list all the starting positions that I want, and then to the left of that put in what's a good lead call to that starting position, knowing that the new call is coming in. Right? And then I've examined that new call, and I'll talk a little later if we have time on how to analyze the call individually. But a flowchart that gives you a lead call, your starting position, your ending position, and a good following call ties them together. Right? And it's good to look at. It really is, to become more and more aware of what will dance for you, what will dance for the dancer. Right? And you can also start exploring the depths of the call a little further by saying, well, I can start from here, I can start from here, where else can I start from? So you get a little variety, and if you become fortunate enough to be a capable sight caller, which most of us agree comes long after you've done a lot of work pushing checkers, diagramming, analyzing, that has to come later. But if you've gotten to that stage, you can actually lay a flowchart down in front of you and call from that. If you're stressing in this particular tip those types of items, or during the night, you can refer to it and be fairly assured. And then as the material flowing and dancing well, helping to ensure the dancer's success rate with a new call. It's a very simple idea, but a lot of us don't take the time to do it. I'm going to bring Don Beck to the podium now, if we can, and Don will work with you. Don is undergoing a lot of pressure now from Earl. Earl started in saying, you have to rely totally, if you're getting Don's notes, on everything being exactly so. Don told me he can handle the pressure, and I believe it.
Thank you, John. I guess thank you, Earl, for the plug also. When I read the subject of what we're talking about, it had a number of items all listed, and they're somewhat related and some not, but I've decided to address what I'm talking about on smoothness of dancing, which is basically what I think the rest of us have interpreted the main item to be also. The theme of the convention is educate and perpetuate, and I know there are a lot of people that strongly believe in teaching your dancers to dance smoothly and how you go about doing that, and getting them so that they can enjoy dancing smoothly. I feel that it is not the dancer's responsibility to dance smoothly, but it is ours as callers. It's yours, each one of you. It's your responsibility to get your dancers to dance smoothly, not by teaching them how, but by the way you deliver your calls each and every time you get up and call. What I'm going to try and cover in our accelerated manner, right, or abbreviated, not accelerated, is some thoughts that I have on smoothness. They're things that I'm sure you've all thought about because you're all active callers, and you probably practice a lot of these. And what I'm hoping for possibly is the way that I've organized my thoughts will be a little bit different than some of you have done in the past, and it'll give you a chance to have a few different insights, and it may give you a possibly gain something from thinking about these things in a slightly different manner. First question is, what is smooth dancing? It's very... There are good ways to explain it and bad. And one of the things I wish I had was more time, records, few squares, etc. But I think I've got a good way possibly to present it. Smooth dancing is the dancing so that you move smoothly from one thing to the next, constantly flowing. When Earl was dancing up here, I don't have the position. It's a good thing this is being taped on audio tape and not visual tape. But changes in direction, still there's a balance and flow with the music in the process of doing that. It's not an abrupt change of direction. It doesn't hurt you to do it. Smooth dancing to the observer, if you're looking for it, is just a constant nice movement. And the thing that comes to mind and I'm sure can bring an image to most of your minds is what smooth dancing is I'm sure most of you have seen the opening ceremonies of the Olympics where they had the square dancing. And especially when the commentators were talking and you didn't have any idea what calls were or anything, but you could just picture this kaleidoscope of colors and action down there. And at that point you weren't even sure if it was a pre-choreographed or what have you. You just saw smooth dancing. The people were moving. It was a wonderful thing to watch. Well, it turns out that smooth dancing is not only a wonderful thing to watch, but it's a wonderful thing to feel. And that's even more important for us. We want our dancers, our customers is the term I was going to use because we are a commercial enterprise here as such. We want them to feel good. We want them to feel better about themselves than they were before. We want them to get a good sensation of dancing, not just drill teaming and getting through material. Now, one of the intriguing things about square dancing and square dance choreography is that it has many rewards, and one of those is puzzle solving, which is quite independent of dancing. It's nice to be able to combine these two, and as I say, we're addressing the dancing end of it today. Why would somebody? What are the reasons we want smoothness? One, as I said, feeling better. One, and I can't remember whether John or Earl or both of them mentioned this, and I feel I'm going to be repeating a lot of stuff because they've said some good stuff already. But one of the reasons there's an advantage to smooth dancing is that dancers can dance better. They can dance choreographic material that is more difficult if they're moving smoothly right into the move already. You know, if you're heading in the right direction to call the next call, you've got and the correct hand is sticking out in that direction already. You've got a much better chance of getting through that call. So you can call more difficult material, they will get through it, and again, when they get through it, they feel better about themselves. It's also less tiring if they're not being abrupt, if they're just flowing smoothly from one thing and moving with the music. And again, any of these things make them feel better about themselves, and when they feel better about themselves, the bottom line is they feel better about you. They feel like they've had a good time. They're going to remember you were the caller that allowed them to have a good time. And I think the bottom line is we want them to like us. Do any of you not have egos? No, we won't talk about that. Anyway, it's a worthwhile goal. Let them like you by feeling better themselves. Now, how do we make the dancers dance smoothly? If we don't teach them, they should take so many steps and do this and do that. And as I said before, it's how you present the material. And if you...
Excuse me, being loud helps.
Being loud helps?
Yeah, Tony told me that. Write that down.
This one's not going to work. It's not connected, but I thought it might be better connected to the house system. Being loud, yes. Are you listening to what Tony's saying instead of what I'm saying?
No, all
right.
Tony on tape.
Oh, I see. Okay. Anyway, how do you present your material so that the dancers will dance smoothly? Now, this is getting into the crux of what I've thought of a number of years ago, and maybe a little different thinking than you have. Most of the people, when they think of smooth dancing, think of body flow. And when I think of smooth dancing, I think of the final bottom line of people dancing in the opening ceremony of the Olympics. Actually, I've thought about this longer than I knew they were going to dance in the Olympics, but people moving smoothly. And me as an observer, as the caller, watching, seeing this smooth movement. And body flow is very important to make this happen, but it's only one ingredient. And there are many ingredients that are all necessary to create smooth dancing. And smooth dancing cannot exist unless all of these ingredients are correct. Let me list briefly what these ingredients are, and then depending on how much time we have, I'll go into a little more detail in each of them. But body flow has to be correct to get smooth dancing. If it's not, things become awkward, jerky, what have you. Timing has to be correct. If you time, stop and go, and what have you, things won't be smooth. They will bounce back and forth. page 2 of the outline. Hand availability. Can I use this hand, does the next call require the left, if the next call requires the left hand, is that hand there available, or is it still tied up with the person behind me, and I have to whip that hand around to do something? Prime example, Earl's Ed Gilmore example, square through 4 hands to a star through, which is fine for the men but not for the women, assuming normal couples. Tempo. How fast is the music going? And how fast are we expecting the dancers' feet to go? Knowledge and ability of the dancers to handle the choreographic material that you're presenting. I could call it well-timed music to good tempo, flowing properly, good body flow, plus material to a set of mainstream dancers, and I'm not going to get smooth dancing. That's one of the ingredients. You've got to use your judgment to know what they can handle. Hardness versus difficulty of your choreographic sequences. Some sequences of calls can be very easy, very standard, very easy for a dancer to get from one to the next, whereas others can be very difficult, even though competent dancers, ones that understand that degree of difficulty in choreography, can still flow through it smoothly. But you've got to understand your group, and hopefully we'll get to a little more of that, and I've got some examples we can go through that. And as you get down the list, some things become either more obvious or more trivial, but things is how slippery the floor is that night, how full the moon is that night. There's a lot of things that make this up, and one of the things that I try and do and teach others when I'm working with them is, as I say, I can tell smooth dancing by watching the square, by seeing whether it's flowing smoothly or by seeing whether there are abrupt changes, whether people are hesitating, whether all squares are doing the same thing or one is doing something different, like running back to their corner and arguing about where they should have been instead of squaring their sets or what have you. Look for that smoothness. The bottom line is watch the smoothness, see it happening while you're calling, and if that's too much to do while you're calling, see it while somebody else is calling, while you're training yourself for this. And when you see something that's an abrupt change, a jerkiness of some sort, then comes actually the very most difficult part. Try and figure out why it's jerky. Did somebody screw up on body flow, timing, hand availability, tempo? Was the material too difficult? And you've also got to use your judgment again in, do you aim for 100% success? Do you aim for 20% success? I personally aim for not 100% success, very high but not 100%, because I want people to be challenged. I can get 100% success in smooth dancing by calling circle left all night, but they aren't going to enjoy the dance. So you got to use your own judgment, and depends on the night and the group and everything else. So don't expect to see, and possibly you see jerky movements, unsmooth dancing, because your judgment said, now's the time to make it just a little harder for this sequence and this tip, just to get their minds going. How are we doing on time? Not too bad. Okay, let's address these one at a time and try and get into a little more. Body flow. Some calls are physically awkward. The call themselves is inherently awkward. The call that first comes to mind is an A1 call, swap around. I can stand there ready for a caller to call it, knowing he's going to call it, and I still can't do it, because your body doesn't go that way from the beau's position, the man's position. One call that I thought would be very awkward when it first came out, and the dancers seem to have accepted it, and we've grown upon it over the years, is spin chain the gears, where people have to just stand there and do a U-turn back. Inherently, it's questionable, but it seems to dance okay, because they need something, like Earl says, to kill those extra 2 beats, so rather than just standing there, they dance in a 180 degrees turn. But anyway, some calls inherently are very easy to avoid. I have to teach swap around to my A1 groups. I don't have to use it. Some sequences are awkward. Earl mentioned a few, like centers in, bend the line. Another one is from a right-hand two-face line, bend the line and flutter wheel. And there are other examples. To my way of thinking, some sequences are borderline. They're awkward, but not not awkward to the point that, per my judgment, it's illegal to use. And these are ones where you have to use your own judgment. And top of that list, actually second on my list in the outline, is star through and veer to the left. The first one on that list is walk and dodge partner trade. Another one is do a right and left through, Alaman left. They're not great, but they're acceptable. Now, on the star through veer to the left, I did exactly what Earl said once, and I got in the square, and I took the woman's position, and I danced it a number of times. Now, granted, my partner wasn't quite as large as what Earl said, so I didn't get yanked off to the side, but in my judgment, it was okay. However, in watching dancers dance it, I use it less frequently than I used to, and I believe I've made a conscientious effort to leave it out of the material in my notes that I publish, because in my judgment, it's borderline, but in some of my subscribers' judgments, it may not be, and I don't want to subject them to it. Body position is another part of body flow. Picture a right-hand two-face line, and we call tag the line. It's a right shoulder pass, and everything works very smoothly, because as you turn right, you're basically presenting the right shoulder of the person you're going to pass right shoulders with. Given a left-handed two-face line, you have left hand is joined. If I call tag the line facing, you've got to move over to your right before you can pass right shoulders. Very awkward. Body position, not the call, not the combination, just the position you're in. Surprisingly enough, no, let's not talk about that one. Good. When you're watching the flow, watch not only the body flow, watch not only an active dancer or an active couple, but watch the inactive couples also. Choreographically, frequently you keep track of the active people in your mind. But you should keep track, for flow reasons, of the inactive people also. Sometimes you get stuff that's going very nicely for the people that are active, and the inactive people, it's very jerky and yanky. The other thing to go along with that is frequently you follow a man. Most men callers and a lot of the women callers follow the action of a man, and the action of a woman turns out to be the one that is not paid attention to, and that causes things like walk and dodge partner trade, star through and veer to the left. Great for the man, horrible for the woman. Pay attention to all of your dancers, not just 50% of them. I've also got overflow as a thing on my body flow mind here. Too much of a good thing can be too much. Here's an obvious example. Follow the women on this. You've got an ocean wave. Do a swing with men on the end. Swing through, spin the top. Women have gone 3/4. Centers trade and fan the top. Anything where you call. My feeling is that where centers go 360 degrees is okay. It's pushing it, but we could do swing through centers trade frequently, and dancers seem to live with that, and it's not a real problem. Even for humor and choreography, sometimes I'll do, and especially when I'm trying to kill time at the end of a singing call figure, so too bad 360. Anything where you go beyond a 360, spin the top, centers trade, I think is pushing your luck. There's a call on the A2 list that inherently has 2 of the 8 dancers going once and a quarter turn in it. Motivate is that call. The woman, the center that starts looking out, is going to do a once and a quarter turn all by herself without anything else added to this. When I teach Motivate, I advise those people that one of the things they have to watch out for is that person's body is going to say, I think I've been gone far enough, it's time to get out of this. Hang in there till the call's over. That helps them not make a mistake. And furthermore, you as a caller should be aware that that's happening and not call a call before it that starts with a center's trade, such as swing through to a Motivate. Do something that doesn't make bad go worse. Some things are not quite as obvious that you're doing overflow, like Earl was saying. couple movement kind of stuff. And this is a case, follow this sequence. Well, here's some sequences where you follow the actives, they're going nicely, and the inactives that you're not paying attention to as couples are going round and round and round. Head square through, 4 right and left through, veer to the left, starting about here from 2 face lines. Couples circulate. Follow the ones that are facing out. Couples circulate, couples trade, Ferris wheel. The ones that are active in the middle are going fine. The others are, they've had it. Let's go on very quickly to the next item, timing. Timing, correct timing in my way of thinking, and there are many ways of doing it, and we won't discuss that, but is the art of being able to present the dancer with the call that they need at the right moment so that they can move smoothly into that next call, so they can dance from one call to the next without hesitation, without rushing. Delivery of your calls with good timing is very important for smooth dancing, and there's a lot of things that can be talked about that to fill our extra 8 hours to teach you how to do that and what to look out for. Hand availability. There was quite a while the dancers or that callers used to preach, don't use the same hand twice. From a double pass-through setup, square through 3 hands to a do-si-do. People would be upset that do-si-do is a right-handed move. Actually, because of body position and offset, that's a very smooth move because you don't need your right hand for the do-si-do. All you need is a right shoulder pass, and it's okay that your right hand is behind you. It's not whether you use the same hand twice, it's whether the hand is available. On the call, on the sequence, scoot back to a swing through. You're using the right hand 3 times in a row, but that right hand is right out there in front of it, so you can use it. On the call, from an Allemande bar, slip the clutch, Allemande left. You're using your left hand twice in a row, but it's available, so it's okay. Box the nat to a right and left through. You're using the right hand twice in a row, but it's available, so it's okay. But there are many cases that a call, your hand is not available. It's left behind you, like square through 4 hands to an Allemande left. If you use it enough, dancers are amazing. They will adapt to it. They will figure out how to do it. They will dance it. Another call that is inherently awkward, but dancers have learned how, and hopefully you will help teach them how to dance it itself, is Dixie style to a wave. But men learn that after they send the woman across, that they step back and rotate over here, then they fall into position to give the left hand and fall into it. They've learned how, and they've made it a very comfortable call to dance. It also helps to teach that. Moving on, tempo. Tempo, how fast the music is going. How many beats of music per minute? Tempo of the music says the music's going thump, thump, thump. Your feet ought to be going step, step, step with that beat. And I'm not sure how much we have to teach the dancers to dance with the music. If you set the music at a comfortable tempo, have your voice moving with the tempo of the music while you're calling, and get it such that the dancers can just walk with the music, most of them will. And those few that need teaching probably won't help. We have strollers in every group. But if you set the music too fast, the tempo of the music too fast, dancers can't keep up with it. So they're just going to walk and do their own thing. If you call smooth dancing, well-timed dancing and everything, the phenomena will happen that Earl mentioned and John nodded his head up and down. Dancers will say you're calling fast. If most callers in your area are calling at 126 beats per minute instead of the 130 we used to talk about, and you're calling at 122 beats per minute, let's say 4 beats per minute slower, dancers are going to feel that difference. But you call smoothly timed dance, and you don't give them a coffee break in between each call, they're still going to feel that it's faster, even though physically they're not moving faster. So, because I think the advantages of smooth dancing are so great, and I don't want the dancers to think that I'm calling fast because I don't want them to be tired, I will slow the music down as much as necessary, 120 beats per minute, to compensate for that speed. They won't realize it's that slow. The music may sound a little draggy because most stuff was recorded at 130. So what you do is you add some extra hype and excitement in your voice showmanship kind of stuff, to compensate, and that overcompensates for the dragginess of the music. It gets the dancers so they can get through a lot more difficult material. They feel better about themselves, etc., etc. John's going to do one quick thing.
Okay, we have enough time to do several things. I want to make a couple of comments about what Don said. I'm going to give the mic back to him. He wants to do with you a few sequences so you can see this. One of the things we're talking about here is momentum and this movement of the dancers. And I don't want you to lose sight of that, because the timing factor as you deliver your calls, if the calls have been separated, we tend to lose sight of what the flow is. We tend to lose complete identity with the fact that if we do touch a quarter, walk and dodge, circle to a line, this type of thing. I think we all have our little pet peeve favorite type things, and if you follow the heads touch a quarter, walk and dodge, circle to a line, that type of thing. You have the girls going right, she's going left, she's going right, this and back and forth. It really becomes rather abusive. But if we separate all those calls out, if we stop the momentum, well, there's nothing wrong with the flow at all. I heard someone in one of the sessions the other day, I had no idea who it was, and it wouldn't matter. The gentleman, they were discussing curlicue, and they were talking about the flow problems resultant with curlicue, and that there were very few ways to go as a following call, short of abusing the girls. For the guys, sure, but for the girls, certainly not. And someone from the floor said, well, what about curlicue and cast off 3/4? I would like to think that this individual has called curlicue and is doing the check your wave interrupt of the action and then calls it. But if he put them together just that way and we watch the motion, we would become aware of how awkward it can be. And whether it be combinations of overflow or reverse body flow, and those things will break a square. A lot of things we were talking to you about are common sense things that you can see. And if you address them, your dancers will be much more successful. They truly will be, but we've gotten into a very big thing, as Earl was mentioning early on, about this stop and go, check, identify your position, and then go on. And body flow suffers. Some people say, yeah, but the dancers are more successful because they have a chance to see it. That's true, but all of a sudden they're not dancers anymore. They're walkers, they're drillers, they're not dancing, and again we lose the advantage, as we said, of the ally of good music and that enjoyment that we can deliver as entertainers, taking use of that tool. And it's that habit that we've fallen into that really worries me. And by bringing you up to par here and accelerating your awareness of what we're talking about, if you do the flowchart action, if you analyze a call, if you break it down, and in fact CALLERLAB has available as a handout a call analysis sheet that you might want to take a look at. It addresses things aside from the name of the call and the definition of the call and the starting formations and ending formations. They break it down. Do dancers have to be facing? If yes, how many? What positions do they have to be facing from? Is a free hand needed? Is it available? We can break that down as in great a depth as you want. But if you're aware of it and you call to the dancers to dance, leading one call to another, then you're going to see this happening. If you're attempting to sight call because you don't have time to do a lot of work, preparation, and study, right, and you're not seeing a problem, I would suspect that you've fallen into the trap that a lot of callers do, and they think sight calling is calling a call, seeing where the dancers have arrived, and then providing them with the next call. No, we can't. All right, do a swing through. Well, we have no flow. Everything's stopped while the caller has tried to figure that out. You can't sight call unless you know where they're going to end up before you've called the call, so you can lead it to them. And this is what happens. And Earl's comments are very valid. If you're calling so many nights you don't have time to study and work on it, you end up reinforcing the bad habits. We want you to be successful. We want the dancers to come away feeling that they have quality in their dancing. That's a very special feeling, and it's just as important to your entertainment of the evening as anything else that you can provide for them. Not all of us are wonderful singers. Some of us cannot go in and yodel and make absolute parades out of our singing calls. But we can all be conscious of body flow. We can all make sure we present in such a way that body flow is a factor. And it's a very positive thing. It's something the dancer gets to experience in some cases where they may never have. So you do need to study and be aware of it. We have some time to explore some examples so you can actually see some movement and experiences and watch the idea of one call moving into another, moving into another. I just only heard one watch. We were talking before about listening to all the little beeping watches going off at exactly 10 o'clock, but I only heard one. We must not all be on the same time length. Everybody's saying, okay. I want to do that, and I would like to encourage you to come forward, make us a square, watch some of these ideas, and see as they're delivered in such a fashion where you can see both good and bad examples of what we're talking about. Don't pass this off. This is really important. This can make your whole dance. It truly can. And I know it's a little dry at times for us to stand up here and keep using the word body flow and smoothness and hand usage, and it can be a little dry. But it's not dry when it's being delivered well with music and the people are moving. And that's what we're all about. It really is dancing. One year we had a theme, did we not, of put the dance back in square dancing. And it really makes a difference. I will tell you something. Some of you know me, realize that I do call in some of the other levels. I call C2 and as rarely as possible C3. But what I'm hearing in the high-level challenge movements more and more, and I'm talking from even C4 dancers, yes, there is such a thing, make it easier and let us dance. We want the wind in our face. We're hearing that more and more from people that are just awesome in the way they approach their square dancing, and they study calls every day, and they study theory. It's amazing, some of these folks. Their dedication is incredible. But they want to dance. And that turnaround is happening very, very specifically, even up there in the challenge world. And that tells us something. It tells us we've come full circle. And that's really nice to see happening, because that becomes important. So that's going to be one of the tools that you must have to continue to be successful. Also, this is very important in beginners classes. Remember, we keep talking about that success rate and that sense of confidence that the dancer has. Do you realize that if they're more successful in any given sequence, that gives you the opportunity to keep them dancing more? They're getting more dance time, less breakdown time, more repetition time. They're going to become better dancers, and part of that is, again, going to come from the body flow. I'd like to thank both Earl and Don for a nice job on their presentation today. If you'll join me in thanking them, I'd appreciate it. Gentlemen. We're not cutting you free for the coffee break, but we do know that some folks decide that now's a good time to beat the men's room, ladies' room rush. But we are going to come up and do that. We really do need a square. We'd appreciate it if we could have a square, and Don is going to show you some examples in motion. So let's do that. For those that can stay with us, we hope you will.
Actually, I wasn't going to go through the whole examples of the whole thing. This last, just several. Square. We need a square. Yes, I do need a square. The last of these items that I was going to talk about was hard material versus easy material. This is going to be some mainstream material here. Before I go through these, let me just do the bottom line of what I was saying. Smoothness means a worthwhile thing of everybody going. Watch your dancers, look for the awkward parts in their movement, and then decide whether that awkwardness was caused by timing, hand availability, tempo, or just what, and then try and make adjustments to your calling so you can smooth that out the next time. I'm going to... John just reminded me that the time is such that we probably will even have time for a few questions and answers if people have any afterwards, so you can get your thoughts going. I'm going to walk these people through 3 sequences, all mainstream calls, body flow, and everything is fine, is good per my judgment. The delivery of the calls hopefully will be timed so that people can do them. The 3 sequences range in difficulty of choreography from what I've called easy, normal, and hard. I will tell you in each case which they are, although I'm sure you would be able to figure it out. Hopefully the dancers are competent enough so that they can get through even the hard one. No, I'm laying something on you. It's not necessary. I suspect what's going to happen will be a little jerkiness on the hard one, which I will do last, the first time through. Then we'll dance it again once they've understood what it was that I had intended, and you'll see that that's also smooth, but because difficult, took a little more time to get there. First, let's go just through a normal sequence. Head square through. It works out, yeah. Swing through. Scoot back. Recycle. Veer to the left. Couples circulate. Women trade. Tag the line and face in. Touch a quarter. circulate once, men run, center square through 3/4, pass through, Alaman left. And hopefully I did my homework right and you got partners back. You can promenade home too. Good. They danced it fine. It wasn't as well timed as I would have hoped because I normally time when I'm watching the dancers and not reading my material, but no music. Who needs music? This is only drill teaming, right? Not really. Yeah, that would have helped too. Yes, Mary. There was a bit of overflow. Yeah. This is a much more basic sequence. To the non-dancer, it would probably appear the same, but probably much more basic, a good beginner class kind of thing. Head square through. So far the same. Swing through. Men run. Couples circulate. Wheel and deal. There goes that foot again, Mary. Do a right and left through. Swing through. Men run. Ferris wheel. Square through 3/4. Alaman left. And promenade home, or you are home. Still very basically acceptable a dance. Not totally trivial, but not quite as much more basic than the first sequence was. This one here probably will take a little more being aware of your position. Heads lead to the right and do a curlicue to a fan the top. Go back and square your set. Did any of you notice a little jerkiness, a little break in the smoothness? The one ingredient of all these we've discussed was difficulty that time. Okay, let's ease you through that part and go on with the sequence. Heads lead to the right. Stop and go intentional just to get them educated here. Curlicue. Check your wave. Thank you. Fan the top. And remember this because we're going to be going through it smoothly afterwards. Pass through. Do a wheel and deal. Pass through to a curlicue and a right and left through. Pass the ocean, spin the top, and do a right and left grand. And promenade home, or you are home. Before we dance this smoothly, now that you've been educated, do you want to look at that curlicue to a right and left through once? Peter says no. The rest of the people look disbelievingly. Well, let's dance it through and see what happens. Let's go from there. As starting again with the beginning. Heads lead to the right and do a curlicue. Fan the top. Pass through. Notice how it's wheel and deal. Pass through. Curlicue. Check your wave. Do a right and left through. Pass the ocean. Spin the top. And a right and left grand. Notice that the body flow was fine on that. Once the dancer ability matched the degree of difficulty of the sequence. So again, know that there are different degrees of difficulty. Know that that's one of the ingredients of smoothness. Yes, it's terrible.
I disagree with the body flow on a curlicue right and left through.
Okay.
We're going to have questions.
He couldn't pass through the area.
Some positioning is not good. Body flow is okay, positioning was not. Okay. It's not, you're not used. First of all, thank you for helping. Thank you for that. Thank you for listening to my part. Let me turn it back to John, and he can open it for questions, and that could be a topic of discussion.
Okay, couple quick things here. We are going to ask you if you have comments, questions, what have you. Please, this is a taped session. Please use the microphone. Let me comment just a little about what Don was doing. Certainly, choreographically, that was a very sophisticated sequence, the last one that we saw. The dancers expressed an attitude at the end that wasn't smooth. There's a lot of things that we initially show dancers that don't seem smooth because they are new to them. And after a while, and relate it back on a very, very basic level, look at your beginners, things that they execute very awkwardly that we know are not. after a period of time and opportunity, it is no longer awkward for them. Right? They have smoothed it out, not because there was anything wrong with it and they've caused the smoothness to create it, but because they've learned. They have grown to that stage of choreographic sophistication. And that's what Don was trying to point out. As he educated the dancer to a higher level of sophistication within the choreographic expectations, they could do a better job. But very tough. But if you sit down and analyze that combination, in fact, I might have used the curly cue to a fan the top, where we started with boys in the middle, girls on the outside, so that the end resultant wave was, quote, normal, girls in the middle, boys on the ends. The flow for that is there, but it's very difficult. The right and the left, the curly cue to the right and the left through situation out of the wave is a killer. Dancers never see that. You know, that's something that you're going to have to teach dancers and show them. They're not going to do that for you. It is not instinctive, which is a difference, right? And calling things in an instinctive manner does make a difference. I don't know any place that I would go with that last particular sequence and expect any success rate on it traveling around in my own clubs. If I wasn't using that sequence every week or variations on it, they wouldn't do it. So certainly we can get far and away beyond in our terms of difficulty. Even if it analyzes well, does not mean the success rate will be there, and that's what Don was speaking to earlier about your judgment of what the floor can handle, what is reasonable to expect them to do, no matter how good we are at pushing the checkers and analyzing, and that's a judgment call. Earl, did you want to address that? Okay. I had a hand in the back. Can you holler? No hands in the back. Again, please use the microphone, and the three of us will field as best we can. You're closest. Go ahead, please. Boost that lady up.
Okay. Dorothy Peeler, California. I would like to have some expertise on when you find your dancers back-to-back. I know you can call chase right and partner trade. Are there some more creative things that you could help just throw off the top of your head, please?
Well, let me mention that we'll keep this on a basic plane. We're not going to be talking advanced choreography. Everybody can relate well to our mainstream approach. One of the tricks to that has to do with what we were talking about before, of what preceded getting them there. However, if you had lines facing and had done a pass-through to arrive at that position, or had been in a 8-chain through position and had done a pass-through to arrive at that position. Okay, you're talking on the plus situation, and you've done an explode the wave to arrive. In effect, you have that same straightforward motion to have arrived back-to-back when they've done the pull-by. And in that situation, you might want to consider having boys run or girls run, which creates your wave situation. If your dancers are a little bit sharper, you could actually have centers run around the nearest ends. Be prepared to deal with an inverted line as a result, but you could follow that perhaps with a cast-off or centers trade. Don has an input on that, yeah?
Just have them move forward, bend the line. And tag the line is another way of doing it. Tag the line after a walk and dodge still has two of the 8 people going badly, but you've got 6 winners on 6 and 2 awkward. So think forward instead of working behind you is when possible.
Also, in terms of thinking forward, we all say double pass through, centers in, and cast off 3/4. That dances very well. Did anybody ever have lines of 4 say pass through and cast off 3/4? Not very often, but it's certainly appropriate. Right? If we had done the one example that was discussed of the pass through after the explode, the lines back to back, and you had the centers run around the ends, again, you have another opportunity for a cast 3/4, but you have to be cautious about your overflow. Those are a couple of examples. Earl, do you want to add anything to that? Okay, we have another question.
Okay, Art Hinton from Sacramento, California. I have a couple of comments. I think us as callers have the tape that plugs into the back of the Hilton, and I use it in my workshops, and that really enhances things. I also have a member of one of my clubs that uses a videotape, and I have them videotape my workshop once a month, and I use that. And I think that with the new age of electronics, we have all these things available to us, and I just go back to caller homework. The question that I have is, we talk about smoothness and flow. And when we're out calling a party dance, we obviously have a program, or I believe we should have a program when we go into it, and we kind of know what we're going to do. But we have different variety of dancers from the front to the back, and being a sight caller, you have a tendency to try to find and pick your couples to be your primaries. But how do you keep the flow going for the whole floor with, say, 100 squares out there? Where would you put your sight? In the middle of the dance? Scan it out and try to pick a medium, or how would you do that?
Okay, I personally would tell you that, and I'll allow any of the panelists to address that, and people from the floor might want to get involved too. You cannot, as a sight caller, focus purely on 1 or 2 squares to the exclusion of all the rest. You are going to have to maintain an awareness of the entire floor and movement of the floor. And you will recognize, especially in the larger groups, the break in pattern. You'll see it somewhere. You may not know exactly what caused it. As you become more and more comfortable, you'll know what caused it, because you'll realize there's the trip-up spot, perhaps, and you'll see that interruption, and you might want to watch for it or give them another opportunity. But you've got to maintain that awareness. You cannot focus solely in, and you need to be watching. Now, that's one of the reasons, if you're going to be a pure sight caller and you're looking, if there is such a thing, and you're looking at multiple squares, those have to be your safety valve squares. You need to leave them and come back to them, and that's one of the reasons you would have more than one. And watch for that, because it's really important, and the dancers are significantly impressed and do appreciate the fact that you are aware of what happened in their square in the back left-hand corner of the room, and you gave them another shot, give them another try at it, that type of thing. Earl, you want to say something to this?
Was this for one tip, a shared program, or was this for the whole night?
No.
This would be for an entire night.
Well, I think, personally, to answer your question, I think you should start your evening with using other than sight to become familiar with the whole floor.
I agree. I use memory and modules to start it out, so I can take...
Well, then you've got it covered.
Well, I guess what is my focus point? I try to scan out, but then I see people breaking over on this side or breaking over on that side, and I realize that, or at least I try to, with the amount of difficulty, give them a little bit extra time to complete the move. But where would my main focal point be for flow and body smoothness throughout the dance?
Well, at times, obviously in a large dance, you're going to have a percentage of squares who are not going to make it. You cannot sacrifice the majority of the floor to allow them always the extra time to recover. You're going to have to recognize some do have to go to the wolves. I'd like to take one more question if we can and then break. We're actually on time for coffee break, folks. Are there any other questions? Appears to be not. We thank you for coming this morning. Thank you for your attention. We hope it helps.
What were you going to say?